Hello there, Ride the Car Guy here, and today we are installing an oil catch can into the Xterra. The reason I'm going to install a catch can is that I recently found out that the line that runs from my PCV valve up into my intake manifold is damaged beyond repair, so I figured if I'm going to repair that hose, I might as well put a catch can in between. I'm going to talk a little bit about PCV and why you would put a catch can in. If you want to jump right to the install, head to the description below where I have the time code in there to go right to the installation. PCV stands for positive crankcase ventilation, and really what that is that inside your crankcase a lot of pressure is being generated, and that needs to be released somewhere. So it goes through what's called the PCV valve, and then it comes back into your intake. So it looks a little bit like this. Fresh air is coming in through your intake, it's being routed through to each of your cylinder banks, and obviously it's going to go through your valves, and it's going to head into the combustion chamber where obviously you're going to have spark and fuel, where it's going to create obviously your explosion and drive the motor. However, while your motor is running, a lot of pressure is being generated inside of the crankcase, and that pressure needs to be released somewhere. So it comes out of the PCV valve, and due to emissions regulations is pumped back into your intake. So it routes out of the crankcase, through some tubes, right back into your intake, and then goes into the combustion chamber and is supposed to combust with the rest of your air and fuel mixture. So when it's all running, it kind of looks like this. The issue with that is that the air that comes out of your crankcase has a lot of oil particulate in it. So when it comes back into your intake, people believe that that's going to affect your performance and the longevity of the motor. So the idea is to intercept that pipe coming from the PCV valve back into your intake. That's where we're going to put in the oil catch can, and the air runs through that can, and it's supposed to take the suspended oil out of the air and leave it in the can. That way the air coming out of the catch can is going to be cleaner and not going to have all that much oil residue in it. Then all you have to do is, during probably your oil change interval, just take that can, unscrew the bottom, and then empty it out, put it back in, and make sure that you keep doing that and it doesn't overflow. Now with this motor, there are technically two places that the crankcase ventilation can come back into the intake. That's only going to be when the engine is under a lot of strain. So if you remove that second hose from its connector, you'll see that there's probably not going to be very much oil residue in there. If you do find that it does have a lot of oil residue in there, you can also put a catch can on that line. But today we're going to focus on the main PCV line that's always being used, regardless of how much strain the motor is under. That's going to allow us to get the biggest impact out of the single catch can. Now these catch cans can range anywhere from 25 bucks to 150. I went with like a $30 one. If you want to get the one that I picked out in this video, head to the description below and there'll be a link there to get it. Now step one in installing an oil catch can is determining where in the engine bay you're going to put it. Now I have a pretty stripped down Xterra model. It's really the base model that you could have gotten. So I actually have some studs just sitting out bare in the engine bay. So I'm going to go ahead and use these. Now I just took a tape measure and I measured out the distance between those, and I bought a metal bracket. I found a bracket at Home Depot. It was actually a lumber bracket, and I just basically put holes in that match the studs here, and then I put another two holes in for the bracket on the oil catch can. I did this because I really want to minimize putting holes in the car. So I don't like to drill into the firewall or drill into any of the support brackets up front. I just like to keep things relatively clean, and if I ever want to reverse it in the future, I can simply unscrew it and pull it out. If you don't have the base model and you have something here, go ahead and in the comments below, let me know what goes here. I don't actually know. Also, if you do have something mounted to these, obviously you'll have to put the catch can elsewhere. I have seen in some other installations people putting it in front of the airbox and routing the hoses around the back of the motor. Now that we have a location and our beautifully crafted bracket, we want to get the kit set up for install. The kit's going to come with, of course, the catch can. It's going to come with some hose clamps, some mounting screws to mount the bracket to something, right? So this mounting bracket mounts to this one like this. And it's going to have your hose connectors. It came with two different sizes. The large one, if you're going to do the catch can on the second PCV line, you'd use the big one. For the main line, it is the small one here. We also have some washers that we're going to use on our bracket to cover the ugly holes I made. And then of course some lock nuts that the kit actually came with regular nuts. I don't trust that. I don't want this thing shaking loose in the engine bay, so I just replaced it with some lock nuts. And then I bought some lock nuts for the studs that are in the engine bay. I'll list the sizes of all these in the description below. Now, this also came with a hose. This is absolute garbage. Instantly throw that out and rebuy the hose. I just bought regular fuel line hose. This is 3/8 interior diameter and 5/8 exterior diameter. That's the correct size for this particular application. If you bought the cheap can like I did, you may have to do some cleanup. This had some cutting fluid on it. It just kind of smelled funky, but just take it apart, make sure everything looks good and it's clean before you do your install. Next, I'm going to take some plumber's tape and an adjustable wrench and just get some plumber's tape on this when I install them into the catch can, so that way we get a nice airtight seal. Once you have the tape on, install it. Excellent. And then just do the same for the other side. Now that both of those are installed, we're going to take our bracket and the 2 holes that I drilled, we're going to mount the bracket to the catch can itself. We're going to do that by removing the mounting bracket on the catch can and then installing the mounting bracket to this mounting bracket. Okay, now again, I replaced these with lock nuts. The ones that come in the kit are just standard nuts, and after a while I feel like they would shake right off. So make sure you get some lock nuts, make sure they're on there nice and tight, and you won't have to worry about this falling out. Once you have that in place, just grab this and install the catch can onto that bracket. Excellent. So our catch can is now on the bracket, and this whole unit is ready to be installed into the engine bay. So back under the engine bay, here are the studs, and I'm going to start by putting on 2 just regular nuts, don't need to be lock nuts. These are going to offset the bracket, so the bracket will sit out a little bit from the side of the firewall. I did this because I found that if I installed it without these spacers, it rubbed up against the firewall, and I don't want to sit there and have it vibrate and shake against it and eventually wear down that paint. So install those 2 nuts, and then we'll move on with the bracket. So go ahead now, and now that those are on, slide the bracket on. There we go. And that should sit just fine, hanging on there. And then I'm going to grab a washer and my nut. So there's that. Push that up against there. Just try to get it on. There we go. Excellent. There's one. And then do the other side. Now grab your wrench and tighten them down. Excellent. So now it's on there nice and strong. Not going to have to worry about it falling out. Also, another thing I like about this mounting location is that this is your dipstick that checks how much oil is in there, and there is still room for you to get in here and unscrew that to check how much oil is in there. Now there is a slight angle to this. It shouldn't be an issue unless you get it too full, but if you don't let it overfill, you should have no issue. Now let's go grab our hoses and just hook it up. Now for this part, I bought 5 feet of hose and I cut it nearly in half. I already measured it out, but they're almost exactly the same length. So start by grabbing this hose clamp and putting the first hose on. Now if you're looking at the front of it, so if you're looking just like this, this is going to be your in and this is going to be your out. So the in is going to be coming from the PCV valve, and the out is going to be going back into your air intake. So we're going to install the in first. Excellent. Slide that over and we'll tighten it down. Then just do the same for the other side. Great, so now that they're installed, we're going to take this side and we're going to go put it on our PCV valve. Then we're going to take this side and put it into our air intake. So we're going to take our out hose first because that's going to be the easier of the two. And we're just going to wrap it behind the motor. So we'll grab that there. All right. And the hose that we're replacing is the one that goes into the intake near the back of the engine bay. And I'll take a photo and put it on the screen here. And you'll see that it's right there. You just have to pull it out. This one's really accessible. And for me, this is the one that's split. As you can see, it's just split right down the side here. But I'm going to take this little clamp out, and we're going to use that clamp for the new hose. Great, so I grabbed the clamp, and I just kind of push this out of the way. We're going to have a hard enough time getting this out anyways. And then feed it behind. It keeps kind of popping up here, but feed it behind there, and then just push it on. Actually, I'm going to want to readjust this so it's on the outside. There we go. Push it onto that intake. All the way. Awesome. There we go. Great, so now we have it on. We have the new hose in with the old clamp because there was nothing wrong with it. And the old hose is disconnected. Now comes the tough part. The PCV valve is on the very back of this left cylinder bank. And you kind of have to really get back there. I'll take a picture to show you which one's supposed to be disconnected. And that needs to be pulled out, and the other hose needs to go into that. Now, unfortunately, I won't be able to show you this, but a few things that I want to tell you is take this big wiring harness. You should be able to pop it out. There's a bracket right here. And if you just grab that and pop it up, you should have a little bit more space back here. Then, once I do that, I'm going to take the smallest pliers that will fit on this bracket. And you can test the bracket right here since it's up higher. You can test that bracket, get the smallest pliers, and then stick them back there, pull that bracket off, and that hose should be able to come right off afterward. Luckily, since it is oily, pulling the hose off of the PCV valve should be relatively easy. Okay, I have it out, and unfortunately I couldn't show you, but to give you an idea, this piece here was in this valve here, and this was just down below. So the easiest way to find it, of course, is just grab the open side and then kind of run your hand down. You'll find it. It's down there. It's buried pretty deep, but obviously not impossible to get out. So now I'm going to take this hose clamp again, pull that off, put that on our new hose, which goes into the inlet of our catch can, and just plug it in. Excellent. It's done. So I was able to snap a photo now that I had some additional hoses out of the way. You'll see that I was able to get it back onto the PCV and using that existing clamp, get it over top. Installing it was about 200 times easier since the other hose, this hose is pretty rigid and just gets in the way. Now that this is out of the way, it's actually has a lot more space back there, believe it or not. So the last thing we're gonna do is just make sure that we don't have any pinches in our hose. And then we might just, I think I'll just zip tie it maybe to one or two of the other looms just to make sure it stays out of the way and doesn't kind of flop around in here. So like I said, I'm gonna put a zip tie here. There you go. And if you have commitment issues like me, you can get zip ties that are reusable. So I like to use these so you can kind of back them out. Just have that, zip tie it on, push the button, it comes right back out. So that way, if you decide you want to change it in the future, you can go ahead and do that. And this one, it looks like I actually cut a little bit long. This was a 5-foot fuel line, and I cut it in half, so obviously 2.5 feet for each line. This one, which is the one that goes to the PCV, does not need to be this long. So I'm thinking I'm going to cut this here and then just shorten it up so it tucks in line with this one here. Once you have everything tightened down and everything's where it should be, just check that nothing's leaking. The easiest way to do that is to just turn your motor on and make sure you don't hear any hissing. So just go listen to the new connections that you made, and of course just the oil catch can area in general, and make sure you don't hear any high-pitched whistling sounds. If you do, just double check your connections, make sure everything's tight. If you continue to hear it, you may have an issue in one of your lines or one of your connections. You have to remake. For instance, here we put that plumber's tape in. Maybe maybe there wasn't enough in there, whatever the case may be. Just you may have to redo some of that. But the last thing you want is a leak in your PCV lines. So I'm going to start it up and see if I hear anything. All right. right, no hissing sounds, and the MIL is off. Other than that, that's it for this video. If you liked watching this video as much as I liked making it, please let me know by hitting the like button below. And then also subscribe and hit that bell button so you know when there are some new awesome DIY car repair videos for you to watch. As always, any questions or comments in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching.